Someone tagged me out of nowhere in the residence group chat. Hey, 702. You're just one guy living alone and rotting at home all day. Why are you hogging two parking spots? My husband has nowhere to park. Starting tomorrow, give one of those spots to us. I'm not taking it for free. I'll pay you $20 a month for the trouble. It's free money, so stop being greedy. I stared at the messages, feeling nothing but pure disbelief. I own 6 properties and 3 prime parking spots in the city. This apartment was just a place I used to store my extra junk. I paid $50,000 for the deed to each of those spots. Some random woman wanted to rent one for the price of cheap lunch. I typed back a simple response. Not happening. I didn't expect the property manager to show up at my door. The next day, he claimed I was misusing communal resources and needed to surrender a spot for neighborhood harmony. Fine. If they didn't want to do this the easy way, I was happy to flip the table on them. I watched the notifications blow up the group chat and almost laughed at the audacity. The woman's profile picture was a staged family portrait. Her nickname was 603 Mrs. Whitaker. Since I hadn't replied, immediately she spammed the chat with more demands. 702, did you hear me? My husband has to circle the block for 20 minutes every night. You're young and clearly unemployed. Why waste such a valuable resource? It's sitting empty. Anyway, what's the big deal with letting us use it? $20 is plenty. I can tell you don't have a real job, so that money should cover a few of your DoorDash orders. The condescending tone made my blood boil. I own 3 units in this specific luxury complex alone. Those spots aren't communal. They're deeded property that I bought with cold, hard cash. The unit in 702 was just a storage locker for my collectibles. $20? That wouldn't even cover the monthly maintenance fee for the spot. I didn't feel like wasting my breath, so I sent a quick text. Sorry, my spots aren't for rent. I use them for my own vehicles. Besides, $20 is an insult. I figured that would be the end of it. Instead, she sent a long, screeching voice memo. Oh, listen to you. We're neighbors. We should be helping each other out. You're just one person. You plan on driving 2 cars at the exact same time. You think you're some kind of big shot. You stay inside all day like a loser. No wonder you're single. No girl would ever want a guy who hoards parking spots. My husband is a high-level executive. If you do us this favor, he might actually find you a real job. The sheer arrogance was breathtaking. Before I could tear her a new one, someone named Miller Property Manager jumped in. Mrs. Whitaker has a point. 702 parking is tight in this building. Occupying 2 spots by yourself is a waste. You should consider the collective good of the community. Let's try to keep things harmonious. If you aren't using the spot, let the Whitakers have it. I felt a chill run down my spine. I pay thousands in HOA fees every year for this upscale Riverdale condo. Now, the manager was helping a Karen bully me out of my own property. I threw my phone on the sofa and ignored them. They could bark all they wanted. I wasn't giving up a $50,000 asset for $20. The next afternoon, my doorbell rang like someone was trying to break it. I opened the door to find 3 men standing there. Miller, the manager, was in the lead. 2 beefy security guards stood behind him. You're the owner of 702, Mr. Linden, right? His voice was dripping with unearned authority. What do you want? I asked, leaning against the frame. Miller waved a clipboard in my face. We received a formal complaint about you occupying 2 communal parking spaces. Management has reviewed records. You only have the right to use 1 spot. The other is an unauthorized occupation. We're here to notify you that spot B17 has been reassigned. Clear your things by tonight. Starting tomorrow, that spot belongs to Mr. Whitaker from 603. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Excuse me, I bought those spots. They're deeded to me. I have the titles in my safe. Why do you have to reassign my private property? Miller rolled his eyes, looking bored. Mr. Linden, you only own 1 residential unit here. According to building policy, it's 1 unit, 1 spot. As for those titles you claim to have, we'll need to verify them with the city. Until then, management is taking control of the spot. I stared at his smug, lying face. My temper was starting to fray. So, you're telling me you're seizing property I paid 50 grand for? Miller flinched slightly under my gaze, but didn't back down. It's not a seizure. It's a redistribution. Don't make this difficult. The HOA board approved this. The HOA board? Who's on that board? Mrs. Whitaker is the vice president. Her husband, Gerald, is a senior member. Everything clicked into place. This wasn't a complaint. This was a shakedown. She tried to lowball me in the group chat, and when I said no, she used her position to steal it. If she couldn't rent it for $20, she'd just take it for free. Miller saw my silence and mistook it for fear. Look, I'm trying to be nice here. Don't be a brat. The board made its decision. You can cooperate, or we can do this the hard way. Any further obstruction will result in fines or legal action from the building. The 2 guards took a step forward, trying to look intimidating. I looked at these 3 grown men threatening me at my own front door. Fine, Miller. I'll remember this. Slammed the door in their faces. My phone buzzed again. The group chat was on fire. Mrs. Whitaker was taking a victory lap. Great news, everyone. Management has officially reassigned Spot B17 to my family. That little brat in 702 tried to hoard it, but justice was served. Thank you, Miller, for keeping things fair. The brown nosers in the building immediately started chiming in. Nice work, Mrs. Whitaker. Someone needed to put that kid in his place. Exactly. Why does an unemployed guy need 2 spots? Mr. Whitaker is an executive at Summit Group. He actually contributes to society. Finally, some common sense. Selfish people shouldn't be allowed to ruin it for the rest of us. I felt my hands shaking as I typed back. That spot is my private property. I paid $32,000 for it during the pre-sale. The HOA has no legal authority to touch it. Mrs. Whitaker replied with another voice memo, sounding utterly disgusted. Oh, here we go again with the fake titles. If you have them, show them. Besides, we all know you don't have a real job. Where did a kid like you get 30 grand for a parking spot? We all know how you really pay for this lifestyle. I'm trying to be discreet to save you some dignity. The chat went wild with ugly insinuations. Now that you mention it, he's always alone. No family ever visits. Being a place like this at his age, probably. Kept man. Some rich sugar mama is footing the bill. Gross. No wonder he's so entitled. He's used to getting things handed to him. I gripped my phone until my knuckles turned white. Linda Whitaker, I've screenshotted everything. Slander and defamation carry heavy legal penalties. My titles are on file with the city. You can check them yourself if you can read. You and Miller are colluding to steal private property. That's a felony. Think very carefully about what happens next, she replied, instantly emboldened by her husband's position. Oh, I'm shaking. Go ahead and sue us. We're taking that spot. My husband works at Summit Group. Our legal department will eat you alive. You can't afford to fight us. Miller, the manager, added his own threat. Mr. Linden, watch your tone. Management is following board protocol. If you continue to harass residents, we will lock your account. I turned off my phone and took a deep breath. They wanted to play dirty, fine. I grabbed my folder of property deeds and walked out the door. I was going to see my lawyer, and I was going to burn their little world down. The next morning, I headed down to the garage to drive to the law firm. But when the elevator doors opened, my heart dropped into my stomach. My car was ruined. All four tires had been slashed and the paint was keyed from front to back. Across the hood, someone had spray painted in bright red sugar baby trash. I stood there vibrating with rage. That car cost me over $200,000, but more than the money, the sheer violation of it was. What got to me, I pulled out my phone and called property management. It rang 8 times before Miller kicked up. Founding board, this is Linden in 702. My car was vandalized in the garage. Send someone down here now. Yeah. We'll get a security guard down there in 3 or 4 hours. 3 hours, I barked. My car was destroyed in your secure garage. Look, we're busy. Just wait your turn. He hung up on me. I waited 4 hours, pacing like a caged tiger. Finally, a guard wandered over. Oof, that's a lot of damage, the guard said, barely hiding a smirk. What is the building going to do about this? I demanded. He shrugged. Nothing. This is a personal matter. Sort out yourself. Sort out myself? I pay 10 grand a year in fees. My car was attacked on your watch. Looked at me with pure contempt. Listen, kid, we are the cops. You probably pissed off the wrong person. A high-pitched laugh echoed through the garage. Oh my God, look at your car. What a mess. I turned to see Linda Whitaker standing there looking delighted. Sugar baby trash. How fitting. Whoever did this really captured your essence. Linda, did you do this? Don't you dare accuse me. I'm a lady. I wouldn't touch that junk. But she stepped closer, her eyes glittering with malice. Maybe it was the husband of one of your clients. Men like you usually end up like this. I want the security footage, I told the guard. The guard's expression shifted. The cameras in Section B are down. Maintenance issue. I look him dead in the eye. Down on the exact night my car gets trashed. He looked over at Linda. She cleared her throat loudly. They're broken, the guard insisted. Nothing we can do. I felt a cold realization wash over me. They were all in on it. Linda leaned in, her voice a poisonous whisper. No cameras, no proof. Such a shame. How are you going to explain this to your sugar mama? You're pathetic. You think you can act like a man just because you have a nice car? You're nothing but a parasite. You deserve everything that's coming to you. I didn't argue. I just reached into my pocket and hit record on my second phone. Say that again, I said calmly. Tell me more about how I deserve this. Linda's face contorted. She lunged forward and slapped my phone out of my hand. Who think you're talking to? I'll ruin you. She swung her hand to claw my face. I didn't move fast enough. On purpose, Miller, the manager, appeared out of nowhere and grabbed my arms, pinning me. Linda took the opportunity to slap me across the face. Hard. You're nobody. My husband is an executive at Summit Group. He owns this city. My cheek stung, and I could taste blood in my mouth. I spat a bit of red on the floor and pulled out my other phone, dialing 911. I'm at the Emerald Towers garage. I've been assaulted, and my property has been destroyed. Linda laughed, completely unfazed. Call him. My husband has the chief of police on speed dial. You're the one going to jail. Miller sneered in my ear. Give it up. Linda, you're outclassed. Apologize to her, and maybe she'll let you leave. Kneel down, Linda demanded, pointing at the floor. Kneel and beg for forgiveness, and I might stop my husband from blacklisting you. Summit Group, huh? I said, my voice cold and steady. I dialed a private number. It was picked up on the first ring. Tell the board of Summit Group to get their asses to Emerald Towers in 20 minutes. Tell their CEO if he's late, I'm pulling the funding for the Southside project and liquidating their stock. Linda Whitaker laughed. It was a sharp, grating sound that bounced off the damp concrete walls. Summit Group's board? The CEO? She looked at Miller, who was still holding my arm with a grip that was entirely too tight. Miller, did you hear this clown? He thinks he's a movie character. He's going to call Arthur Pendleton, Gerald's boss's boss. Miller let out a dry chuckle, but I noticed his grip loosen. Just a fraction. He was a small man who wore authority like a cheap suit, but he wasn't entirely stupid. He looked at me, trying to read my face. Mr. Linden, playing pretend isn't going to get you out of this. You assaulted a board member's wife. He didn't touch her. A voice called out. We all turned. It was the security guard, the one who had claimed the cameras were down. He looked suddenly pale, his eyes darting toward the garage entrance. Mr. Miller, maybe we should just wait for the police. Let them handle it. Shut up, Pete, Linda snapped, her eyes flashing. She stepped closer to me, the scent of expensive, cloying perfume mixing with the smell of spray paint from my ruined car. Let him make his little phone calls. Let him embarrass himself. My Gerald is the executive vice president of acquisitions. Do you know what that means, you little parasite? It means he decides who gets contracts in this city. He has more money in his brokerage account than you'll see in 3 lifetimes. I didn't answer. I kept my second phone, the one that had been recording the entire interaction, from my breast pocket, running. My cheek throbbed where her manicured nails had, grazed my skin, leaving a hot, stinging line. I tasted copper on my tongue and spat a small splatter of blood onto the gray concrete right at her feet. Linda sneered, taking a step back to avoid getting her designer's shoes dirty.
Disgusting.
A feral animal. That's what you are. Exactly 14 minutes later, the screech of tires echoed from the garage. Ramp. It wasn't the police, not yet. A fleet of 3 black Lincoln Navigators tore into Section B, their headlights cutting through the dim, dusty air of the underground garage. They parked in a staggered formation, effectively blocking the exit. The doors threw open almost simultaneously, and several men in tailored charcoal suits stepped out. In the lead was Arthur Pendleton. At 58, Arthur was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He was the CEO of Summit Group, a multi-billion-dollar real estate development trust. Usually, Arthur carried himself with an air of absolute, unshakable calm. Today, however, he looked like he had run a marathon in his suit. His tie was slightly askew, and beads of sweat sat on his forehead despite the cool garage air. Right behind him was Gerald Whitaker. Gerald looked exactly like the kind of man who would marry Linda. He was in his mid-40s with thinning hair, slicked back, wearing a bespoke suit that was just a little too tight around the middle. He was walking briskly, trying to keep up with Arthur's frantic pace, looking utterly bewildered. Arthur, Gerald was saying, his voice echoing. I don't understand. Why are we meeting here? What is going on with the South Side Project? Linda's face lit up. When she saw them, she immediately smoothed down her designer skirt and rushed forward, her voice turning into a high-pitched, fragile wail. Gerald, oh, thank goodness you're here. You won't believe what happened. Gerald stopped, blinking in surprise. Linda, what are you doing down here? Why are you in the garage? It's this psycho. Linda pointed a trembling finger at me. The boy from 702, he's been stalking me. Gerald, he tried to attack me because the building reassigned his illegal parking spot. He threatened me, and when I tried to defend myself, he said he was going to have you fired. He's crazy. Miller stepped forward, his posture instantly shifting into something deeply obsequious. Mr. Whitaker, Mr. Pendleton, I'm a property manager here. I can verify Mrs. Whitaker's account. Mr. Linden here has been highly combative, refusing to comply with HOA regulations, and he physically threatened Mrs. Whitaker when we attempted to serve him notice. Gerald's face flushed red with anger. He adjusted his glasses and took a step toward me. You think you can lay a hand on my wife in my own building?
Duh.
You have any idea who I am? I will have you evicted by morning. I'll make sure no landlord in this city touches you. You little, Gerald, shut up. The voice was quiet, but it cut through the garage like a razor blade. It didn't come from
me.
It came from Arthur Pendleton. Gerald froze, his mouth still half open. He slowly turned his head to look at his boss. Arthur, what did you say? Arthur wasn't looking at Gerald. He wasn't looking at Linda or Miller or the ruined car. He was looking at me, and for the first time in the 3 years I had known him, Arthur Pendleton looked genuinely terrified. He pushed past Gerald, practically shoving his executive vice president out of the way, and stopped 3 feet in front of me. He looked at the red paint on my car, then at the blood on my chin, and finally in my eyes. Mr. Linden, Arthur said, his voice trembling slightly. I came as soon as I received your call. Please, tell me this isn't what it looks like. The went dead silent. Linda, smug expression froze on her face. Miller's jaw dropped. Gerald looked between the CEO and me, his eyes wide with a sudden, dawning horror. Arthur, Gerald stammered, his voice losing all its executive weight. Do you know this kid? He's just a tenant. He lives in 702. He doesn't even have a job. Arthur turned slowly, his face twisted in pure, unadulterated fury. A tenant? You idiot. You absolute miserable idiot. Arthur took a step toward Gerald, his fists clenching at his sides. This kid is the primary shareholder of Linden Holdings. He is the sole underwriter for the Southside redevelopment project. He owns 40% of Summit Group's preferred stock. If he pulls his funding, we are bankrupt by Friday. Do you understand me, Gerald? Bankrupt. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a man. Gerald's face drained of all color, turning a sickly, translucent gray. He looked at me, his lips trembling, his hands shaking so violently he had to shove them into his pockets. No, that's not possible. Linden Holdings is run by an older board. This is just a boy. I'm the sole trustee of the Linden estate, Gerald, I said quietly, speaking for the first time. My voice was calm, almost conversational, which only seemed to terrify Arthur more.
My
Father passed away 5 years ago. I prefer to keep a low profile. I use 702 to store my collectibles because the humidity control in this building is excellent. Or at least it was until your wife decided she wanted my parking spot. I pointed toward the B17 spot, where a brand new Mercedes SUV, presumably Gerald's, was currently parked, occupying the space I had paid $50,000 for. Your wife offered me $20 a month for the spot. I continued, stepping closer to Gerald. When I declined, she used her position on the HOA board to reassign it. When I still didn't comply, your property manager. Here, I glanced at Miller, who looked like he was about to faint, threatened me at my door with security guards. And when I came down here today, I gestured to my car, the slashed tires, the keyed metal, the bright red spray paint, that red sugar baby trash. Your wife did this, I said, and when I tried to record her admitting to it, she slapped the phone out of my hand and struck me across the face. Miller here held my arm so she could get a clean shot. Arthur's head snapped toward Miller. If looks could kill, the property manager would have disintegrated on the spot. Is this true? Arthur hissed. Mr. Pendleton, I was only trying to maintain building harmony. Miller stuttered, his knees visibly shaking. The HOA board submitted a signed directive. I don't care about your stupid HOA. Arthur roared, his voice bouncing off the concrete rafters. You held down a man who could buy this entire building and turn it into a parking lot just to please this woman? He pointed a finger at Linda, who had shrunk back against the side of a Lincoln Navigator, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Gerald, Arthur said, turning back to his executive. You're fired. Gerald gasped. Arthur, please. I didn't know. I swear. To God, I didn't know she was doing this. Linda, tell them. Tell them I had nothing to do with this. Linda was trembling, her hands clutching her designer purse like a shield. Gerald, I was just trying to get you a parking spot. You always complain about having to circle the block. You ruined my life. Gerald screamed at her, his professional demeanor entirely shattered. Do you know what kind of debt we're in? Do you know what happens to my options if I'm terminated for cause? We lose a house. Linda, we lose everything. We're not done, I said quietly, cutting through their panic. They all looked at me. I called the police 20 minutes ago. I said, checking my watch. They should be here any second. But before they arrive, we're going to solve the mystery of the security cameras. I turned to Pete, the security guard, who is trying to slowly back away into the shadows. Pete, he froze. Yes, sir. The cameras in section B, are they really down? Pete swallowed hard. He looked at Miller, then at me, and finally at Arthur Pendleton's imposing security team. He knew exactly which way the wind was blowing. No, sir. They aren't down. Mr. Miller ordered me to delete the footage from last night and turn off the feed for this morning. But I didn't delete it. I backed it up on a thumb drive. I have it in my locker. I didn't want to get in trouble for property damage. Miller let out a strangled groan and sink against the wall, his face buried in his hands. Excellent, I said. Go get that drive. Pete. Now. Right away, sir. Pete practically sprinted toward the security office. Just then, the blue and red flashing lights of 2 police cruisers illuminated the garage entrance. The sirens wailed briefly before being shut off, and 4 officers stepped out, their boots clicking on the concrete. We received a call about an assault and major property damage. The lead officer, a stern-looking man with a graying mustache, said as he walked up to our group. He looked at the ruined car, then at the blood on my face. Who is the victim here? I said, stepping forward. My name is Julian Linden. I'm the owner of Units 702 and spots B16, B17, and B18. Last night, my vehicle was vandalized, causing over $150,000 in damages. This morning, I was physically assaulted by Linda Whitaker. I pointed to Linda and Miller, the property manager, who restrained me while she struck me. The lead officer looked at Linda, then at Miller. Is this true? He's lying, Linda shrieked, her voice cracking. He's a tenant. He's been harassing us. My husband is an executive. Her husband is unemployed. Arthur Pendleton interrupted, his voice cold and clear. And as the CEO of Summit Group, the company that manages the commercial leasing for this entire district, I can assure you that Mr. Linden's account is entirely accurate. We have witness testimony, and we are currently retrieving the security footage that captures the entire incident. The officer looked at Arthur, recognizing the name and the authority. Immediately, he nodded to his partner. Get the woman and the manager. No, you can't arrest me, Linda screamed as the officer stepped toward her. She tried to run, but she was wearing high heels and slipped on the slick concrete, falling hard on her hands and knees. An officer quickly handcuffed her, ignoring her screeching protests. Miller didn't even fight. He just held out his wrists, his face completely blank with despair. He knew his career, his reputation, and his freedom were gone as they were being led away. Pete returned, clutching a black USB drive. He handed it directly to the lead officer. Here is the footage, officer. It shows Mrs. Whitaker slashing the tires and spray painting the car at 2:14 a.m. It also shows the assault from this morning. The officer took the drive and nodded. Thank you. This will be logged into evidence. Gerald Whitaker stood in the middle of the garage looking like a ghost. He looked at his wife being shoved into the back of a police cruiser, then at Arthur, and finally at me. Mr. Linden, Gerald whispered, his voice cracking. Please, I have 2 kids. We have a mortgage on a $3 million brownstone. If Arthur fires me, and if you sue us, we're ruined. I looked at him, feeling a mild sense of pity, but mostly just a profound sense of exhaustion. These people had lived their entire lives, thinking they could step on anyone they deemed beneath them. They thought a quiet young man living alone was an easy target, someone they could bully, humiliate, and rob without consequence. You should have taught your wife some manners, Gerald, I said quietly, and you should have checked who actually owned the property in your own building before you let her use the HOA as her personal weapon. I turned to Arthur. Arthur, I want the Southside project paperwork on my desk by tomorrow morning. I want Gerald's termination clause executed to the fullest extent. If I see his name on any Summit Group payroll by noon, Linden Holdings pulls its entire portfolio. Arthur bowed his head. It will be done. Mr. Linden, I deeply apologize for the actions of my former employee. We will cover the full cost of your vehicles. Restoration, of course. No need, I said, looking at the ruined car. The insurance. We'll handle it, and my lawyers will collect every penny from the Whitakers. And the HOA, I want them to pay for it out of their own pockets. I turned and walked toward the elevator, leaving the chaos of the garage behind. That night, the resident group chat was dead silent. Usually by 8 p.m., the chat would be buzzing with petty complaints about trash disposal or dog barking. But tonight, nobody said a word. The rumors of what had happened in the garage had already spread through the building like wildfire. The unemployed kid in 702 was actually the billionaire landlord who owned the ground beneath their feet. At 9:30 p.m., a single message appeared in the chat. It was from the HOA president, a retired judge who had been conveniently on vacation during the parking spot redistribution.
Dear
Residents, effective immediately, the HOA board has been dissolved pending a full financial and legal audit. Mr. Miller has been terminated from his position as property manager. We deeply apologize for the recent disruptions and assure you that all property rights will be strictly respected moving forward. I smiled slightly, closed the app, and muted the notifications. I walked over my balcony, looking out over the city skyline. The lights of the Riverdale district sparkled in the night, reflecting off the dark water. They wanted to play dirty. They wanted to do things the hard way. But in the end, the table hadn't just been flipped. It had been completely demolished. And as I took a sip of my tea, looking down at the quiet, empty parking spots below, I realized I finally had some peace and quiet. The quiet did not last long, but It was a different kind of noise now. The low, frantic hum of people realizing they were trapped under a falling house. By Wednesday morning, the legal wheels were turning at a speed that only absolute, unmitigated capital could command. My legal team, a formidable group of senior partners from one of the city's most ruthless firms, had already filed a civil suit against Linda and Gerald Whitaker, Miller, and the Emerald Towers Homeowners Association. The charges were extensive: civil conspiracy, grand larceny, tortious interference, assault and battery, and defamation. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was an unrecognized number. I let it ring. Then it rang. Again and again. Finally, a text message came through. Mr. Linden, this is Gerald Whitaker. Please, I beg you, answer your phone. We need to talk. My lawyers say you're asking for triple damages on the vehicle and the full clawback of the HOA spot value. We can't pay this. We will lose everything. Please have mercy. I stared at the screen, feeling a cold attachment. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. A few minutes later, another message arrived, this time from a different number. Mr. Linden, it's Miller. I'm so sorry. I was pressured by the Whitakers. They threatened to have me fired if I didn't go along with the parking reassignment. I have a family. Please drop the criminal accomplice charges. I'll testify against them. I'll do whatever you want. I blocked that one, too. It was amusing how quickly the wolves turned into sheep when they realized the sheep they had been hunting was actually a tiger. I spent the afternoon in my apartment cataloging my collection. I had a rare assortment of first edition books, vintage horology pieces, and mint condition mid-century design drafts. It was a quiet, meticulous hobby that required patience and absolute stillness, traits that my opponents clearly lacked. As I was carefully polishing the glass of a 1969 Omega Speedmaster, my doorbell rang. I paused. I wasn't expecting any deliveries. I walked over the door and looked through the security camera feed. Standing in the hallway was a man I hadn't seen in person before, though I recognized him from the building's directory. It was Harrison Vance, the actual president of the Emerald Towers HOA, who had suddenly returned from his emergency vacation in Aspen. Beside him stood Arthur Pendleton. I unlocked the door and pulled it open, leaving the security chain engaged. Gentlemen, Harrison Vance looked like he had aged 10 years. He was a tall, silver-haired man who usually exuded the effortless confidence of old money. Today he looked utterly defeated. He held a thick leather binder under his arm. Mr. Linden, Vance said, his voice quiet and respectful. Thank you for opening the door. I know we have no right to intrude on your privacy, but Arthur and we desperately need 15 minutes of your time. It's about the future of the building and the lawsuit. I looked at Arthur. The CEO of Summit Group gave me a tight, pleading nod. I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully, stepping aside. 10 minutes. I have an appointment with my financial advisors at 4 o'clock. Of course. Thank you, Vance said, stepping into the foyer. He looked around the apartment, his eyes lingering on the immaculate, museum-like setup of my living room. There was no junk here. Every piece of furniture was a masterpiece of Scandinavian design. Every painting on the wall was signed by a listed artist. Please sit, I said, gesturing to the gray cashmere sofa. Vance and Arthur sat down while I remained standing, leaning against the edge of a solid oak dining table. Mr. Linden, Vance began, placing the leather binder on the coffee table. I want to offer my most sincere, unqualified apologies on behalf of the entire board of Emerald Towers. What happened to you in this building was an absolute disgrace. It was illegal, it was unethical, and it goes against everything we stand for. You are the president of the board, Mr. Vance. I said calmly, where were you when Mrs. Whitaker was using her position to seize private property? Vance winced. I was in Colorado, sir. But that is no excuse. The truth is, Linda Whitaker has been a cancer on this board for 2 years. She bullied her way into the vice presidency by weaponizing small infractions against other residents until they resigned. She and Miller had a mutually beneficial relationship. We are currently conducting an audit, and we have already found discrepancies in the building's maintenance fund. It appears Miller was steering contracts to her husband's shell companies. So it wasn't just a parking spot. I said, a small smile playing on my lips. It was a systematic embezzlement scheme. Yes, Arthur Pendleton chimed in, his tone grave. Gerald wasn't just using his position at Summit Group to help his wife. He was using his wife's position here to launder kickbacks from small-scale contractors. We've already turned our internal findings over to the forensic accountants. Gerald is facing federal wire fraud charges, Mr. Linden. He won't just be unemployed. He's going to prison. I nodded slowly. And what does this have to do with me? My lawsuit is civil. I want my property restored, my car paid for, and the HOA held liable for allowing a hostile environment and physical assault on its premises. Vance leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. Mr. Linden, if you're civil, lawsuit goes to trial, the publicity will destroy the valuation of this building. Emerald Towers is a luxury brand. If the public finds out that the board was colluding with a corrupt manager to physically assault a resident and seize their deeded property, our unit values will plunge by 30 to 40%. Overnight, dozens of innocent families who live here will lose millions in equity. That sounds like a failure of oversight, Mr. Vance. Not my problem. We. No, Vance said softly, and we aren't asking for charity. We are here to offer a settlement, a complete, unconditional settlement. He opened the leather binder and turned it toward me. First, Vance said, pointing to the documents, the HOA will pay for the full restoration of your vehicle plus an additional $250,000 in damages for pain and suffering to be paid immediately from our reserve fund. Second, we are stripped of all rights to interfere with your parking spots. Spots B16, B17, and B18 will be permanently designated as private, restricted access zones with physical barriers installed at the HOA's expense. I looked at the documents. The terms were incredibly generous, but I wasn't done. And the Whitaker's unit? I asked. Vance's eyes flashed with a cold, righteous anger. Unit 603 is currently mortgaged through a bank that has close ties to Linden Holdings. Given Gerald's termination, and the impending criminal charges. They will default within 30
days.
The HOA has already filed a lien against the property for unpaid emergency assessments related to the legal fees they've caused us. We're going to foreclose on them, Mr. Linden. They will be evicted by the end of the month. I want the unit, I said flatly. Vance blinked. Excuse me, I want to buy Unit 603, I said. At the foreclosure auction, the HOA will use its influence to ensure my bid is accepted. I want the deed to their apartment. I think it would make an excellent secondary storage unit for my larger sculpture pieces. Arthur Pendleton let out a soft, dry laugh. It was a laugh of sheer, terrified respect. My God, Julian, you really don't leave prisoners, do you? When someone tries to destroy my life, Arthur, I make sure they don't have the tools to try a second time, I said. I looked at Vance. Do we have a deal? Vance swallowed hard, took a pen from his breast pocket, and signed the authorization form at the bottom of the page. We have a deal, Mr. Linden. The board will ratify this tonight. Good, I said, taking the pen and adding my own signature. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a call to make. They both stood up, looking visibly relieved, but still incredibly tense. Arthur paused at the door, turned to look at me one last time. Julian, Arthur said quietly, the Southside project, we can still count on. Linden Holdings? The project is a good investment, Arthur, I said, checking my watch. It was never about the project. It was about the people who thought they could use your name to step on me. As long as Gerald Whitaker is gone, we are partners. Arthur let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. Thank you, Mr. Linden. Have a good afternoon. The door clicked shut behind them. I walked back over to my balcony and looked down at the courtyard. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, golden shadows across the stone pavers. In the distance, I could see a moving truck parked near the service entrance. I pulled out my phone and opened the residence group chat one last time. The chat was still locked for general messaging, but as a primary property owner now recognized by the system, I had administrator override privileges. I typed a single final message to the group, to the residents of Emerald Towers. The matter regarding spots B16, B17, and B18 has been resolved. The HOA has verified the deeds and full restitution has been made. I would like to thank those who supported justice and fairness in our community. I hope you continue to enjoy your homes. As for Unit 603, I look forward to welcoming my new tenants, or perhaps I'll just leave it empty. Have a wonderful evening. Julian Linden, Unit 702 and 603. I press send. The response was instantaneous, even though the chat was locked. Dozens of like and heart reactions began to flood the message, a wave of silent, terrified approval from the very neighbors who called me a sugar baby and a loser just 48 hours prior. I chuckled softly, slipped my phone into my pocket, and turned back to my quiet, peaceful apartment. The table hadn't just been flipped. It was mine now.